let's move on and talk about the agenda and kind of how we're going to do this. So first, I'll talk about how colleges determine and award aid. And again, this is there is no standard by which schools do this, and pretty much every school does this differently. So I think it's important to kind of at least understand the general idea. Then we'll talk about what aid is available. Then we'll talk about understanding and comparing financial aid awards that students actually get in their senior year when they've already applied. And then the common mistakes to look out for, reading the fine print, figuring out how to make sure that when you are faced with these financial aid award letters, that you are not, missing some really important parts. All right, and then we'll have time for questions. So how do colleges determine your eligibility? There's two forms, and if your kid is a senior, you already done this, but we do have some parents of some younger students in the audience, so I'll go through this. There's FAFSA, Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It's a federal form that pretty much every family fills out. And then there is the CSS profile. It's a form off of a college board. It's a paid form. About 400 universities and colleges, most of them are private schools, use that form. Some schools are FAFSA only schools, so they only look at FAFSA. Other ones take both FAFSA and CSS profile. They have different methodologies by which they evaluate what you put on the form. CSS profile goes a lot deeper into financial aid, and they are really doing deep digging, I would say, in the financial aid world, in the financial world of yours to award you financial aid. So from those two forms, they figure out an EFC, expected family contribution. This is what they decide, whether it's the government or the school, what they decide that a family can afford to pay for 1 year of college for one student. Then every school has their own cost of attendance. And I'm throwing a lot of these words to you because this is going to be really important when we get to the actual financial aid awards so that you understand how this all ties in. Every school has their own cost of attendance. Cost of attendance means how much money do they think a kid will need to attend 1 year of college. Tuition, housing, meal plan, living on campus, transportation, pocket money, books, supplies, fees, all of that. That's cost of attendance. And so they figure out your need based on all these factors. They take their own cost of attendance, they subtract expected family contribution, and they derive at your financial need. And this financial need is how they determine how much money you're eligible to receive, whether it's from the government, whether it's from the state, or from the institution. Again, as I'm talking, and if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I will answer them at the end. All right. I'm gonna hang on a second. Okay. What are the financial aid options? So financial aid will come from a variety of different places. And you will see that on the award letters that I'm going to show you later on in the presentation. So we have federal aid, we have state aid, we have institutional aid, and we have corporate aid. Those are some of those you probably have heard, like outside scholarships. Dunkin' Donuts has scholarships, Starbucks, Google, Amazon. All these companies have scholarships that they give to students to go to college. There's also some local scholarships. There's local organizations, cultural organizations that give outside scholarships. This is really important because every school treats that aid differently. Again, I'll explain how. So from that, there's two types of aid. There's the need-based aid, which is derived from the family's finances on the FAFSA and the CSS profile. They determine that need and they try to fill that need with financial aid. Then there's the merit-based aid, which has nothing to do with your finances. It has nothing to do with how much money you make, how many assets you have. It is solely based on the student's ability for whatever, whether it's academic ability, musical ability, talent of some sort, if they play a sport, if they have they're ranked number one in their graduating class, and how much does a school want to recruit your student to come. Most schools use merit financial aid to attract students. So if they see a student that's really desirable, and it doesn't matter how much money their parents make, they will want to attract that student by giving them money to attend. So again, from all of that, there's two types of financial aid. There is gift aid, which is free money, money that you don't need to pay back. It's literally given to you just to attend school. That's need-based grants and merit scholarships. And there's self-help aid. That's loans, that's work study, that's money that is basically you either have to pay back or you have to work in order to earn. It's not free money. So how do colleges award financial aid? And this is a lot of what I do when I work with schools, and I look at their policies and procedures to figure out, okay, is what you're doing actually make sense? Is it legal? Is it ethical? Because most schools have their own policies and how they award financial aid. And from that, a lot of schools have different ways of how they fill that need gap that I told you about in the previous slide. So there is very few schools that meet full need. So which means cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution is your financial need. There are some schools that will cover 100% of that. There very few schools do. Most of them will leave a gap of some sort, which you're going to have to cover with either a loan or out of pocket or with savings or however you decide to cover that. A lot of schools use leveraging awarding strategy, which means that they will cover more of that gap for students that they want to attract more. So a better student with higher grades, with higher SAT scores, that is more attractive to the school, is going to get more need-based aid than the same student with the same need, but maybe not as attractive, that somebody that doesn't look as attractive on an application. It's a very sticky, very gray area. And you will never know what the leveraging strategy is, but usually there is some kind of a matrix that the school is working off of. If student high scores, high GPA, really high achiever, they will get 90% of their need covered, and it goes down from there. Some schools will award merit and free money grants and scholarships first, while others will award loans and work study first, and then see what is left, and then maybe give you a little bit of a scholarship or a little bit of a grant. Totally legal, totally up to the school. A lot of schools award on the first come, first serve basis. That's why I always tell parents that it's imperative that they apply first. FAFSA CSS profile open October 1st, you should be the first one to apply, because a lot of times money runs out, and if there's no more money, there's nothing you can do. And then outside scholarship, what I told you about, that corporate scholarships, the policies vary so much, and I'm gonna show you how that really shows up in award, in financial aid awards. So let's talk about understanding your financial aid. One thing to realize, if you're not already a parent of a senior that have seen these letters, is that they all are going to look and feel and read very differently. And the reason why is because there's no universal template. There's nobody that came out and said, all of you guys need to list this, and then this, and then this, and you need to make sure that it's easy to read, and you need to make sure that it's easy to understand. There's none of that. So they can do whatever they want. They can send you a PDF, They can send it to you in the email. They can send it to you in the mail. It's good. It can look very different. Could be an Excel spreadsheet, or it could be an elaborate booklet. So it's your job to really figure out what it is that they're giving you. So first, let's talk about the gift aid. Those are your merit scholarships. That's your need-based grant and any other scholarships or grant. If you see a scholarship or a grant, that usually means that it's gift aid. Then self-help aid is a little bit more complicated. Well, it's not complicated. There's more questions when it comes to self-help. For example, for loans, you will need to, when you're looking at the letter, you need to figure out who the lender is. Is this a federal loan? Is this a state loan? Or is this a school loan? Who is the borrower? Is this a student or is this a parent? And a lot of times you can't tell by the award letter. They just put blah, blah, blah loan. And you need to figure out, what is this loan? Who is this given to? Is it guaranteed? Like, are they giving it to you already? Did you qualify, or do you need to apply? Because a lot of times for loans, you have to apply and you need to qualify based on your credit history and your score and things like that. So when they're putting it on the award letter, does this mean that you already pre-qualified? Which a lot of times you're not. And it's one of those, I don't want to say a scam, but it's one of those mistakes that a lot of people make when they see a loan. They assume they pre-qualified, but actually they haven't. They still need to apply. So what are the interest rates? What are the annual maximums? What are the repayment terms? All of these things are super important to understand before you sign off on any award letter. Then let's talk about work study. Work study is an award. It's usually a few $1,000s, and it's given to a student by the federal government. Well, I retract. It's given to the school to give to the student if the student is able to find a job on campus. So one, you need to understand that work study is never guaranteed. It's going to be up to the student to find that job, and it's going to be up to the school to pay the student that money. And then in return, it's going to be up to the student to decide what to do with that money. They can use it, to buy lunch every day or as pocket money, or they can turn around and go to the bursar's office and pay that money for tuition. So this is going to be between the parent and the student to figure out how that all is going to work. And so some of the questions that you might want to ask if you see a work study on the award letter is, how many students actually get to work on campus? Because they can give you this money, but if the job is 1 in a million and you can't get a job, that pretty much that money means nothing. It's you can't get it until you have a job. And then you need to find out what is the average pay per hour, because they can give you, say, $6,000, but if they pay minimum wage and then you're not allowed to work more than 5 or 10 hours a week, are you actually going to are you actually going to be able to get all that award, that whole fund? So some of the questions that you might want to consider. So let's look at some examples of the financial aid award letters. And I told you, again, if you're a parent of a senior, you've seen a bunch of these. But if you are, a parent of a younger student, you may have never seen it. And so this might be kind of eye-opening. You'll see lots of numbers. And as I said, they're not going to look the same. They're going to look very different. Here on the left, you see West Ash College. They split up your direct charges and other expenses. So what this means is the direct charges are going to come on your bill that you're going to have to pay for the school. So that's your tuition, your fees, it looks like they have some loan fees. I don't know what it is, but, and then room and board. And then they're estimating for books and supplies, transportation, and personal expenses, you're going to need another about $4,500 for the year. And that total comes out to your direct costs are 39,000 and your estimated are 4,500. So then they break down your financial aid award. Looks like they're giving a grant. There's a presidential scholarship. My first question is, what is the scholarship and what do I need to do to make sure that I get it every year? Is this a one-time thing, or is this something that I'm gonna have to reapply for? Then it's a Pell Grant. It's a federal grant that some of you may or may not know. There's a very common federal grants. That's Pell Grant and SEOG grant. Perkins loan, which is a federal loan in a student's name. I know this because I've worked with this stuff, but if you don't know, this is something that you should be asking about. What is this loan? And then you have subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loan, which are federal loans in the student's name. And so they're estimating that your cost for full-time is 43,000 and financial aid that they gave you is 27, and estimated cost to attend is $16,000. So don't forget that they're also counting all of those loans in that number. So moving on to the other sample award letter, it looks like they're first listing the financial aid. So see how in the first award letter, they did the cost of attendance first. Here, they're doing it in reverse. So it looks like this is a huge scholarship that the student is getting for $31,000 per year. Again, first question is, what is the scholarship? How do I make sure that I keep it? I have seen very unfortunate situations with students that have gotten an exceptional financial aid award letters and gone for it, and just to realize in their second year that the award wasn't renewable, that what they got was just the one-time award, and then next year they're going to have to reapply. And turns out that this amazing scholarship, and I'm just giving an example, like for example, this faculty scholarship, need to make sure that this scholarship is awarded to sophomores and juniors and seniors, and it's not just a freshman year scholarship. Because again, I've seen some scholarships that are awarded and then it turns out a year later that, oh, this was just a one-time thing and it only is given to freshmen, and there's no way to extend it or to renew it or whatnot. And it's really unfortunate. So really dig into every scholarship and every grant that's offered. So again, they're giving Pell Grant, SEOG grant, and then they're breaking down the loans separately for the federal loans, and breaking down direct billable costs and indirect costs, and work study is listed separately. So another set of examples. Here on the left, you will see that they are listing the cost of attendance, which is great. Tuition fees, room and board, books, all of this is standard. They're also pointing out that the expected family contribution was $4,500, and 1,000 of that came from the student and 3,500 from the parents' resources. Then they're telling you that they're going to give you a bunch of aid. And look at that. Their cost of attendance and their total award are exactly the same, which, it makes you feel like, okay, like this is a really good deal. It looks like I'm going to have to pay nothing. But as you dig in, you start understanding that, okay, Pell Grant, federal grant, there's some SEOG grant. Okay, great. The great grant from a state. Awesome. One thing to realize that all of those grants that are need-based, that are from the federal government, they're going to fluctuate every year. They're definitely not guaranteed. So all of that money that, that 1176, 750, 2000, another 2000, all of that money might be gone next year, depending on what the parent and student resources are. But okay, so moving on, then we have Lakeside Campus University Award. I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is a need-based grant that is also going to fluctuate, or if this is a merit scholarship that I'm going to have to do something extraordinary to keep. So that's a huge question for me. Work study, they're giving you $2,000. They're assuming you're going to get a job, but what if you don't get a job? Or what if you're not going to be able to make $2,000? Okay. So then they're giving you some Stafford loans. Then they're giving a Lakeside campus loan for $4,000. What is that loan? Whose name is that in? Is that for a student? Is that for a parent? And then the kicker at the very bottom is the Parent Plus loan eligibility. So it's for almost $5,000, but what eligibility means, Parent Plus loan is actually a loan that you need to apply for and you need to qualify. And not every parent is going to qualify for this loan. So the way they've structured this award, from a first glance, it looks really good because it looks like the award covers 100% of cost of attendance. But again, as you start digging into it, you start realizing that it's not at all what it is. And though there's a ton of loans in here, that there is, some stuff that is not going to be available probably next year. So that's not a really good financial aid package. And then the last one I thought was really interesting because they're giving you a total cost of attendance. Okay, $20,000, that seems fine, cheaper than all the other ones, but what does that include? Are they including room and board? Are they including, books and supplies and transportation? Is this everything? Or is this just just the tuition? Like, what's the starting line? You can't figure out this award without knowing what the total cost of attendance consists of. Then what they did is they asked you, are you going to be bringing some money with you and by way of outside scholarships? And you are obligated to say, if you are bringing money with you, that yes, you are. So it looks like this student is bringing $2,000, an outside scholarship and some other aid of $500. And what they did is they actually first subtracted it from their need. So they are taking it exactly from the cost of attendance because now they're thinking we don't have to cover it. This is money that student is coming in with and we don't have to do anything about it. So off of the need it goes, and then they subtract the expected family contribution of $6,000 and they leave you with financial need of $12,000, where generally you would hope that it would be still $14,000, that they wouldn't subtract that outside scholarships and the outside aid to begin with. So it looks like they didn't qualify for Pell. They're getting a state scholarship institutional grant, which again, what is that? What does that actually mean? And then some Stafford loans. And so their total award that actually covers 100% of their need. But in all seriousness, it's only $7,000 of free money. Everything else is either loans or that other money that the student is coming in with from outside sources. So again, without knowing the starting point and the full cost of attendance, you can't really understand what the award is. And this is, again, not a very good award. So how do you actually compare? Now we're here for, you guys are here for this section, especially the parents of seniors. So first, you need to start with cost of attendance, and you need to make sure that you include the same things on every single financial aid letter. And that's why I say create your own spreadsheet. Forget about those sheets and the everything that the schools are sending you. Create your own. Start with cost of attendance. What are you going to include on there? Are you just going to do direct costs, what you're going to owe to the school? Are you going to do the whole cost of attendance? For me, when I am looking at the awards, I tend to do just direct costs because indirect costs fluctuate so much. For books, there are some schools that will say you need $4,000 for books, while other schools will say you need $1,000. I know for a fact that you can spend just a couple of hundred on books if you buy them used, if you go to the library, or if you share with your friends. I've had students that spent years in college and never bought a book because they've shared with classmates and things like that. So also transportation. Who is there to say that you're going to need $2,000 for transportation? If you are living on campus, if your family is, a couple of miles away outside the city, you're not going to take any flights home. You're just going to take a commuter rail home, or a bus, or your parents are going to come pick you up. You're not going to need that money. So to me, indirect costs, they're good to have just as a reference point to see what the school thinks you're going to need, outside of the bill that you're going to owe them. But to me, the direct costs are the most important, because that's what you actually going to owe. Everything else you have a lot of discretion on. You can minimize those costs if you're really, being frugal and smart about it. So decide what are the important components and include it on for every single college. And if your financial aid award letter, just like in that last example, doesn't break down the cost of attendance, what exactly is tuition, what are the fees, what is the room and board, then you can call the office and you can find out. That's information that's readily available. They all have to provide you that information. Then you need to add up all of your gift aid. And I'm telling you to separate gift aid from self-help, because those are two very different categories. You want to know how much free money you're being offered at each school. So this is your merit award, your need-based grant, your scholarships. Then add up all the self-help, definitely see what they're offering you: loans, work study. Make sure you understand what is a loan and what is a grant. Sometimes they're not clearly marked, but again, if you have questions, I'll be happy to decipher and figure it out for you. But do that. Have a separate column. And then what you can do is you need to compare the percentage of gift aid and self-help aid to figure out the quality of the financial aid award package. Obviously, the higher the percentage of the gift aid, the better quality that financial aid package is. You can have a package that covers 100% of need with all loans. So that's not a very high quality award letter. So I'm sure you understand where I'm going with that. So then you need to, after you figure out, okay, you're looking at all your financial aid awards, you figure out the highest quality has the most gift aid. Then you need to figure out your net price for each college. Make sure, again, you use the same starting point, and I would recommend just using direct costs, because indirect, they fluctuate a lot by the family, by the institution, by your living situation. Figure out if you're going to do this for a full year or just per semester. I recommend doing it for the full year. And again, direct cost or full cost of attendance, I recommend doing direct costs only. Then subtract your gift aid only. Why? Because work study is not guaranteed. Loans is something that you need to pay back anyway. So, okay, you're not going to owe it right now, but later down the line, you're going to owe that money with interest, which is going to be even more expensive. So you need to figure out how much it's actually going to cost you, not just today, but also down the road. So subtract gift aid only. Ignore what the letter says. Go by your spreadsheet, go by your calculations, and then figure out how much debt you can take on. How much debt are you willing to take on? Don't consider work study as a sure thing. Don't assume that your kid is going to get a work study job and then turn around and pay that money for tuition, because a lot of times students either can't get a job, or they get a really low paying job, or they don't want to spend that money on tuition. They want to have that money for pocket expenses. And then again, use your own spreadsheet, or there is a really good tool on the Big Future website from College Board. It's called Compare Your Aid Awards Tool. I don't know, maybe I am just a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to this stuff. Maybe it's just because I like to have an understanding and full control of what I'm looking at. But I think doing your own Excel spreadsheet is much more valuable, because you really can see a lot of these awards are not going to be apples to apples comparison, but this is what's going to allow you to see really apples to apples if you understand what you're looking at. So, common mistakes and fine print to be aware of. First, you need to realize that financial aid awards are not forever and they're rarely guaranteed. So, what that means is most of the times when you get a financial aid award, it's for that year. Especially need-based awards, because that's what they are. They're need-based, and every year your need may fluctuate depending on how much money you're making, what assets you're having, how much money your kid is making, how many students you have in the household. Maybe today you have one in college, and 2 years from now you're going to have two in college. So your need is going to grow as more students start attending college. So that is going to fluctuate every year. So what you want to look at and look for in fine print or anywhere on the award letter are any of the promises. Words like this is a promise, or this is a guarantee, or this is a renewable award. Those are the best type of awards. Why? Because even if you get a raise next year, or if you get a bonus, or if you win a lottery, they're guaranteeing you that money so you can be sure that you will at least have this. If nothing else, you will at least have this. A lot of merit awards, again, since this is a recruiting tool and colleges use that to attract students, they guarantee merit for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But they also have some terms that you need to be aware of to make sure that you get to keep that aid. And that brings me to the next point. Understand the terms of merit scholarships. Most of the times there's a GPA requirement and there's a credits per semester requirement. Those are the two most basic terms that the student needs to make sure that they fulfill to receive the scholarship, to make sure that it's renewed. And there are some schools that have very unfair terms, to say that, oh, they gave me the scholarship and they only want me to keep a 2.5 GPA and take at least 2 or 3 classes. That is very rare. Most of the times, financial aid offices want to make sure that the student that has that money really deserves it. So they, a standard, I think, is a 3.0, but I've seen it go up as high as 3.8 and 3.9. And that's just tremendous pressure to put on a student. So you need to make sure that, one, your student understands what they need to do to get that money. And two, how is that going to affect their social and academic life while they're in college? Is this going to be so much pressure that they're going to hate every moment of it and they're not going to be able to fulfill that requirement and feel like a failure every semester? Or is this something that is going to motivate them and it's just going to be another kick for them to move forward? So, and another point is those outside scholarships. And you've seen in one of the examples that I've mentioned that what they do with that money is totally up to the school. One thing that you do need to know is that you will need to report that money to every school. If you're bringing money with you, you'll need to report that money. What they do with that money or what they do with that information is really up to them. Is it going to go against your unmet need, what you've seen in the award letter, or will it reduce self-help? So, okay, you have an award, you have a bunch of loans in the award, but you're bringing $5,000 in outside scholarship. Are they going to say, okay, well, we're going to, take away your loans because you can have that money to cover the cost? Or in the worst case scenario, will they reduce your gift aid? And this is, again, a policy that you really need to dig into to figure out, especially if you're bringing outside scholarships with you, what are they going to do with that money? Are they going to just swap the outside scholarship that you worked really hard to get for the merit scholarship that they gave you, which could have been renewable, in that case, that's the worst deal. Super unfair because merit scholarships, as I said, a lot of times renewable with certain terms. And outside scholarships are usually a one-time lump sum payment. So you should never swap something renewable for a one-time payment. Moving on to some other common mistakes. Sometimes you'll look at all these awards, and as a parent of a senior, I'm sure you've been in the situation where you're looking at it and you're like, oh, well, this school is giving the most aid, so that must be the best award, which may not always be true, because why? It could be a larger amount, but also cost of attendance might be a lot higher. So, then it all balances out. Your out-of-pocket expense might still be very large. Some cost of attendance may not include things like room and board and things like that. And if your kid is living on campus, you really need to know that their cost of attendance includes these things. So, again, back to the example, that $20,000 cost of attendance, your kid is going to live in school. Is that going to include their housing and meals? Because if it is, that's a great price. But if it doesn't, how much extra are you expected to pay for room and board? And then I actually just today saw on one of the, somebody sent me an award letter and they said, oh, wow, look, it looks like they're covering my whole financial aid. They're giving me financial aid to cover the whole cost of attendance. And on there, it's all loans. It's a federal loans, and then it's an institutional loan that they're giving you. So they gave no self-help at all. But the number looked really impressive. It was $65,000 in financial aid. But, what is that really? That's not gift aid. Know that you don't have to accept your whole financial aid package. You can pick and choose. You don't have to accept the loans. You don't have to accept certain things. And if some of the terms really don't work for you or don't work for your family, you're not obligated to take that money. And a lot of times, for some reason, families are afraid to call the financial aid office to ask questions. And this is something that what the financial aid offices are there for, that they're, especially in this time of year, they understand that this is their part of their job is to answer questions about the awards that they're sending out. So you should never be worried that they're going to take something away. Or, I've spoken to some families where I'm like, well, if I call and I start asking a lot of questions, what if they start digging deeper and, taking money away from you? No, that's not going to happen. They already gave you this money. So unless there is some, grave mistake, that something happened that wasn't supposed to happen, which normally that, is not the case. They're not going to take away your aid. They're not going to take away your scholarships. Asking questions is a good thing. And then, the last point is that most schools do have appeal processes. They do negotiate financial aid. This is not something that's set in stone and something that you look at, and again, keep forever. Even if you accept this award today, later down the line, if something happens with your family's finances, somebody gets laid off, there's a divorce in the family, something happens that drastically affects your ability to pay, there's always an appeal process, whether it's now before you get into college or later down the line when the student is already in college. So that concludes this presentation.